I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hey, Johnny, what's up?
I have a problem with Lisa. She said that I hit her.
What? Well, did you?
No, it's not true. Don't even ask. What's new with you?
Well, I'm just sitting up here thinking, you know? I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You think girls like to cheat like guys do?
What makes you say that?
I don't know. I'm just thinking.
I don't have to worry about that because Lisa is loyal to me.
Yeah, man, you never know. People are very strange these days. I used to know a girl. She had a dozen guys. One of them found out about it, beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street.
What a story, Mark.
The Disaster Artist is directed by and stars James Franco as Tommy Wiseau, and it also stars Dave Franco as Greg Sestero, who wrote the book The Disaster Artist, which this movie is based off of.
And this movie is about the cult classic movie The Room, as well as the relationship between the two stars of that movie, Greg Sestero and Tommy Wiseau.
But before we start this review, we just want to let y'all know that back some time ago we did a actual video over The Room for our Moronic movie Mayhem. So if you haven't seen that already, you can either click up here or click down here to check that out.
Yeah, because we do show clips from The Room, so if you haven't seen The Room, you can definitely see some of the highlights from that movie.
Now, the first thing I want to bring up is that the fact that this movie, if you're a fan of The Room, you're going to love this movie because it does have its little parts that is made for the fans. But don't expect it to fully be a true story about the making of The Room. Because to me, I really feel like it's more about the story of the relationship between Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero.
Yeah, and sort of to add on to that, it's not really a movie that's made to mock The Room necessarily. It's not just making jokes about how bad The Room was. It's more about how Tommy Wiseau and Greg Sestero became friends and about their lives and how they decided to make this movie.
And one great thing about this movie is like the fact you said it doesn't make fun of Tommy Wiseau. I mean, at certain points it does, but it just shows who Tommy Wiseau was as a person. And this movie truly humanizes him at certain points, and it truly shows the emotions that this guy has. And I mean, I don't really see it as being much of spoilers because we all know it's a terrible movie, so we all know that, you know, when people see the movie theater, nobody's gonna like it, you know, everybody's gonna laugh at it. And so you get to see these true emotions, this like what Tommy Wiseau was feeling whenever people got to see his movie, and what he was feeling during the making of this movie. And the fact that Greg Sestero and Tommy Wiseau, they truly needed each other. Now you can truly see how much of a fan James Franco is of The Room. He really did great. He did fantastic as Tommy Wiseau. And you know, a lot of the things, if you look into this movie, James Franco, you know, he directed The Disaster Artist, but he actually directed it as Tommy Wiseau. He went at the full extent of making sure that all of this movie was just Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, and it's sort of funny because if you don't know who Tommy Wiseau is and like how he acts and everything, and if you haven't read about the on-set things that he did, then you'll probably think that what James Franco is doing with his acting as Tommy Wiseau is pretty awful. But that's just who Tommy was, and it's just funny. So I suggest before you see this movie, sort of read up who Tommy Wiseau is, so you don't think that it's horrible acting.
Yeah, and then, you know, we all saw like clips of James Franco, so we all can kind of know that he was going to do good. But what kind of surprised me was Dave Franco. I never really saw Dave Franco as like a great actor. I always saw him as being like a decent actor. Sometimes I actually saw him as being a pretty bad actor. But in this movie, he actually did really well. I'm not going to say he did as good as James Franco did for Tommy Wiseau, but that's because, I mean, you know, Greg Sestero doesn't have as distinct of a personality and as distinctive an accent as Tommy Wiseau does. But, you know, for his character and for his acting, he does really well in this movie. This movie, truthfully, probably was one of the most inspirational movies I've seen in a long time. Because, you know, in this movie, Tommy Wiseau, he truly he was truly wanting to be an actor. He was truly wanting to be famous. Him and Greg Sestero, and they actually did it. I mean, it might have not gone in the way that Tommy Wiseau was hoping, but he did it. He went out there. He made a movie, and like as much.
Granted, he did have like an endless amount of money somehow that nobody knows about.
And as much as like people want to make fun of him, he did it. He went for it, and he did it.
Yeah, and going back to how this movie doesn't really truly mock The Room, it's moreover pretty much the central theme of this movie was friendship. Just how Tommy and Greg became friends, and how their friendship was sort of their anchor throughout this entire journey of making this what turns out to be an awful movie, but their friendship sort of kept them together throughout it all.
Yeah, and that kind of goes on to help out with the emotional aspects of this movie. And even though this movie is really funny at times, it does have its share of drama, and there's a lot of parts in this movie that really do make you feel for these characters. Because all of them, they have their faults. They have your way of looking at them like why would the person do that? But at the same time, you understand them. But Tommy Wiseau, he had a vision, he had a dream, and he was so invested in that vision that he was kind of a jerk at times to people. He felt like he needed to be in order to push them to get to the greats, and also to get him up in that status of the greats, because he would look at other directors and see how they would do things with their actors, and he felt like he needed to do that in order to get his actors to where they needed to be.
Now, one negative I can say about this movie is that while most of the writing was strong, I felt like there were times where it was sort of weak. Like whenever they first got the idea to start writing the movie, it just sort of jumped to them starting to write it, and it was sort of like a weird jump to okay, now we're gonna start making a lot of Room references for the audience, and it was sort of weird how it happened.
Yeah, and one probably my biggest complaint, because I truly don't have a lot of complaints with this movie, but probably my biggest one is the fact that you have Greg Sestero and you have Tommy Wiseau as the main characters, but it feels like they're the only ones that we truly focus on for this movie. But for the other characters and like the actors in The Room, their characters, they seem to not be that big of a part, like almost at all. They're very minor to this movie, and it really doesn't seem like this movie truly cares about those characters very much.
Yeah, and that sort of goes back to what I was saying about how some of the writing was a little weak. Now, I'm not a filmmaker, and I'm sure the actual filmmakers did their research for this movie, but whenever I was reading just what things that happened on set, I felt like it was more of a disaster, just how everything happened and how Tommy Wiseau made a lot of the crew quit and a lot of the actors had to leave. Like the actor who played Peter, the psychiatrist, he actually had to step away from the movie to film another movie, so they completely replaced him with another character. And I felt like they could have shown a little more of that to show how much of a catastrophe this movie actually was, which they did a pretty good job of doing, but I felt they could have done more.
So guys, if you're a fan of The Room, you're definitely going to love this movie. Also, I feel like some people who haven't seen The Room might actually get some enjoyment out of this movie. It's just so well written. So I'm going to go ahead and say that The Disaster Artist is 88% awesome.
If you're going to see this just to see a making of the movie The Room, then this probably isn't going to be what you're looking for. But it is a pretty well-written movie about the friendship of Tommy and Greg and their journey as they chase their dream. So I'm going to say that The Disaster Artist is 85% awesome.
So guys, don't forget to like and share this video. Also comment below and let us know what you thought about this movie. Also tell us some of your favorite lines from The Room, because as you can see, we're very big fans of it.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2awesomemen.
And if you're interested, click right here to subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later. So guys, don't forget to like and share. Also comment below and let us know what you thought about this movie and The Room, because we are huge fans, as you can see. Do you notice? We haven't even talked about this at all.
Oh, yeah.
We totally forgot to talk about this.
That's why I sort of want to show the scene,
Yeah. Oh God.